Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the sixth episode of SecuriTEA and Crumpets, where we host security professionals each month to talk about different security topics. Today, I am delighted to introduce my sixth guest, Gareth Hayes. Gareth is a security researcher at Portswigger, and he's worked at other places such as Microsoft. And if you've ever ran Burp Suite and found something like DOM-based cross-site scripting, uh, from like the active scan or some of its capabilities, Gareth probably had a little bit of a hand in those types of things. So today, Gareth is going to be demonstrating how to use his extension Hackvertor. So welcome, Gareth. Welcome to the stream.
Yeah, so Hackvertor basically started out as an online tool because I was trying to encode things multiple times. So what the problem with encoding things multiple
Oh,
times is,
sorry.
oh,
Fix this.
yeah. So what I was saying, the yeah, it's an online tool, and the difficulty with like encoding multiple times is that it's hard to track what the encoded text is and the decoded text is. So I wrote this tool to do that basically, and it uses tags in the same way you have like functions. So if you have a function call, you can replace it with a tag, and if you've got arguments to that function, you can have tag arguments. So how it works is basically if I put some input in here, like for example test, and I select that text. Lewis, is it working now? Yeah.
Yep, you're good.
Cool, cool. So yeah, you select that text, and then you can then encode it in base64, for example. So here, this is the tag. So this is the base64 tag. This is the argument sent to it, in this case, encode. And this is the resulting conversion. And you can do this multiple times. So if you imagine HTML and how HTML works, then it's very similar to that. So you can multiple encode it. So we've got two base tags here. So we double encode the base tag. So this has got an encode, this has got an encode. They've all got unique numbers in the online version. So each tag has its own unique number. And what happens is it converts the text from inside to outside. So first it'll base64 encode, and then it goes to the outer tag and base64 encode. And this is extremely powerful for testing for cross-site scripting, filter bypasses, and stuff like that. Because you can HTML encode, you can URL encode, and it will just do the encoding for you and let you edit the plain text. Like, for example, if we've got an XSS vector and we want to URL encode it, you select that text, you click URL encode, um, and it URL encodes it. And you can do that operation again. So if the site was expecting double URL encoding, you can just pass another tag. But what's really powerful is that you can mix these tags together. So if we delete this tag, and we might want to, for example, HTML encode. So here, HTML entities. So now what it's done is it goes to the innermost tag, HTML entities. It converts the vector into HTML, and then the outer tag runs and URL encodes it. So this is really powerful for like bypassing filters and yeah, and hacking websites and stuff. And it's useful to do this sort of encoding. But what also, when developing the online version, I found like having a console here was quite useful. So like you can just add stuff into the output console and execute it, and it'll execute. And you can add like HTML, and you can run that HTML. And so when you click test HTML, it'll render the output so you can see it. And I found this sort of way of testing can lead to lots of cool bugs and stuff. And I found tons and tons of stuff in this output console, like JavaScript syntax tricks and stuff, and characters that can be inserted where they shouldn't be, all sorts of stuff, all using the console. And it had features like you can inspect objects just like how the console works, and it'll give you information like, is it writable, is it configurable, what type is it a constructor? So this sort of information, and you can traverse the objects as well, just like how dev tools used to work. Yeah, but this is years old now, and I started to work at Portsmouth, and what I immediately noticed was the need for the online tool was not as great as I thought. And what I ended up doing was I started work in making Hackvertor a Burp suite extension. So yeah.
So before we get into the let's just go back to the web browser real quick. So I've used this online resource for a long time, and I've never even like considered using the features that you included, like, you know, making sure that things can still execute, because that would actually be really useful when you're like testing things such as you know, like you're trying to get from one context to another. You want to be able to, you know, see how it might render or how it might execute within inside the different contexts. And I didn't even think that about these particular contexts here to be useful. So would you still say like using Hackvector's web browser functionality is still useful, or would you say like if you're using Burp Suite as your primary testing feature, would you say that this is kind of now obsolete?
Well, the conversion is obsolete. I've not really done any code improvements to it. But as a JavaScript hacking tool, I find it quite useful. For example, you can just do like a for loop in the console, and this is how you can fuzz things quite easily. So then you can just give it a DOM node, and you can set the inner HTML of the DOM node, and then add a tag and an attribute, and then insert like from jar code, and then and you can do basic fuzzing in there. So like you can do a for loop, you can then test the DOM to see if the injection was successful or not. And this is how I found interesting bugs like the Firefox one, where you could do this. So this is a HTML comment, right? And I found that Firefox allows that a new line after the exclamation mark, which can be useful for bypassing filters and stuff. They obviously fix that, but I use this technique to fuzz for that sort of information, and you can to fuzz it. It's quite easy. So like you can use the history here. Wrong one. So if you fuzz, like you can fuzz like the full Unicode range if you want. You can do like 1 million if you want. And Chrome's that fast nowadays that it's quite easy to fuzz all the characters.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just build up a for loop, and then you use the DOM. So if I can remember rightly, so we create an element, give it like a div tag, and then with that div element, you could do div dot inner HTML, and then give it a comment, and then or maybe if we assign it a variable, and then do the assignment here. and then just increment that, and then add a closing. So say if I wanted to fuzz that character, then I could just do string dot from char code and then pass the argument there. And then, yeah, and then you could use the DOM. So you could do that and then add a tag here. So here the comment is open and we're checking if the comment is closed. So if you add in another ending comment here and then add a simple image tag or whatever, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And then here, you can do a query selector on that div and then look for the image tag and you found a character. So you just have a log and you push the character. So this is super simple JavaScript, but it's super effective. So you just check this log to see if you've got that query selector. And because Chrome is so fast nowadays, you can fuzz like millions of characters. Like, well, it's over 1 million characters quite easily within seconds. Yeah, so this is how I found like the Firefox vulnerability. Well, not vulnerability, maybe quirk is a better word for it. So yeah, Firefox would then treat that new line as a comment with this, a closing comment. So the new line would be added. The image tag would then be available to the query selector.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know you've successful, so you add it to the log.
Got it.
So then you just check the log and you can see all the characters that were successful.
That's really smart.
So it's like it's a really fast way to do fuzzing. So I've found so many bugs just using that trick. You could probably do this in the console, but it's not as effective because the HTML can't be rendered in the same way as it can be with Hackvertor. And I use this online tool just to test things quickly. It's a bit like this was before there was a JS Fiddle, but now JS Fiddle is quite popular. Yeah, this sort of thing is what I used to test.
That's really smart. So if some people who are reading the code, you're basically looping through the operations, and then once you're doing a query selector on that div to try and find an image tag, and then once you've found that image tag, it then pushes it, because realistically, if there's nothing wrong with what's actually being processed, then you're never going to see an image, because it should be within a comment. So.
And you can obviously it's difficult to type exactly what I used to do.
Yeah.
Like, I've done this quite a few months ago, but that's the basic concept of it. So you can use this console to inject your fuzz string into a HTML element and then check the element to see if it was successful using a query selector, which is really super fast. Excuse me, sorry, I've got a bit of a cough. So that's the basic concept of it, and this is how I do a lot of fuzzing in JavaScript. Like, you couldn't do this back in the day many years ago when I first built this, because the for loop would struggle with a lot of elements, because like you're using something like IE, which was awful. But nowadays we've got Chrome, and it's super fast. Yeah. So yeah. Sorry, Luis.
No, you're all good. I remember just even trying to do debugging with inside the browser used to be so slow for my machine, where I was just lucky if I was able to put 2 intercepts on to be able to see what was happening. But yeah, the browsers definitely have came a long way in the fact, and obviously that query selector wasn't a thing for a long time as well. So this it's when it came out, that was quite a pretty and obviously they've been making improvements to the overall engine in the parsers and how everything is interpreted. So it's definitely nice to see the evolution of how these browsers are working. But yeah, this is like to be honest, like this is actually like really fascinating stuff for me. so I'm glad you were able to show this to me. But yeah, so
Cool.
I think
Yeah, well, that's how I used to do fuzzing in Hackvertor. Yeah, so like you can do stuff like set the inner HTML, execute JavaScript, alert the output, inspect the elements and stuff. But yeah, this was really popular. Well, this style was really popular back in the day, like a few years ago. But things have moved on since then, and I saw the need for working at Portsmouth. I saw the need for to use these tags, these Hackvertor tags within Burp itself. So I started to develop a Burp extension in Java that did the same thing that the online version did as far as conversion went. Yeah, so if I show you Hackvertor and Burp, so Hackvertor and Burp is slightly different. So you can install it if anybody doesn't know or is new to Burp and they don't know what to do. Just go to the BAP store and select Hackvertor from here, and then just install it with the install button. I've already done it, so it already appears. So Hackvertor in Burp Suite is very similar, only that the conversions are instantaneous. So you don't need to run the convert button to convert it. It will just happen instantly. And the tag numbers have gone, so there's no need for tag numbers now. And this was from an awesome pull request from Corey Arthur, where he helped me with the parser. So he created a parser, and he removed the need for these underscore numbers for the unique numbers. So now we've got a really cool parser in there that allows you to do multiple conversions and many nestings as much as you want, which is really cool. Yeah, so like you can do your conversions here and the output will change. And you've got all these tags, so you can have hex, for example. So if we can see, we can put hex in there,
so
it'll convert it.
we have a question from the chat. Is it possible to change from the theme because the light grey font is a little difficult to read with the screen resolution?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
If need be, we can jump rather than showing a screen, we can show the application itself. That might fix it. But how does that look? Thanks. Is that better? I think that's better for the chat. So yeah, we can continue.
Cool. Yeah. So here we've got a hex tag, and we've got a tag argument. So the tag argument you can just specify. So this particular tag, it uses it as a separator. So there you can convert to hex, and it will just show you the results. And yeah, you can do multiple encodings of that. But what's really cool is I wrote this and I found the conversion useful and interesting. But what I found is using repeater, I felt the need to do this in the repeater tab, because it'd be pretty awesome to be able to edit in the request and then edit the text with the tags.
Yeah.
And what you can do is you can just right click and then use the Hackvertor extension, and then choose like we'll stick with base64 because everybody understands base64. So what happens is in the request we have a base64 tag, and what Hackvertor does, it adds an intercept operation on the request. So when the request is sent, it sees that there's some Hackvertor tags, and it will convert the text before it's sent to the server. So what you're actually getting is the encoded value. So the tags stay there and enable you to edit it but the resulting output is a base64 encoded text, which is super useful for hacking websites that require complex encoding, like HTML, URL, double URL encoding, or other things like that. And you can also use the extension in the actual panel. So if you wanted to, you can use the Hackvertor extension in there, and this will have the same result, and you can send the request to that. Yeah, so yeah, you can send the requests in the tags, and you can double URL encode, and if you wanted to, you could do the conversion here too. So if you right click, extensions, Hackvertor, auto decoding, and convert, and it will convert your text live in there as well
Oh
if you wanted
wow.
to.
That's pretty nice because that, what you used to have to do is you had to take that text, you then had to then go and put it into the decoder and then do like base64 encoding and then bring that value back. At least
Yeah, well,
that's how I used to do it at least. So that's
yeah, this way
significantly
you can do it in the request. Yeah, it's a lot more powerful than that. It saves a lot of time.
100%. That's amazing.
Cool. And what you can do with the tags is you can use multiple tags. You can use variables, which I'll talk about in a minute, and you can split you could gather information from part of the request and place it somewhere else. And you can also use custom tags too. So we've got um, we've got variables. So the first thing what I found was when working with James Kettle, he was doing a lot of request smuggling like 2 years ago. And what I thought might be useful is a tag variable. So, for instance, if you've got some text like test, for example, and you wanted to set that as a variable, so you can set that as a variable, and you can say, all right, why don't we get the length of that string? So if we go to the string section and then length, it'll report the length. But what a variable does is, so here our variable is called variable1.
Mhm.
So what we can do is we can go to the variable section here, and we can get that variable. And you can place that variable multiple times. And you can then run conversions on that variable. So you can see how you can chain together lots of interesting things by using the set variable tag on part of the request, and then use the get variable tag to get that variable. So you can select parts of the request, and you can do all this in the repeater tab as well.
That was going to be my next
Yeah,
question, actually. I was like, this looks really awesome because you could just have your base kind of thing that you want to fuzz, and then you could
yeah,
basically start to like build additional variables if you wanted to, or like conversions on those values, and then utilize them. Because I'm assuming you can probably also include this variable with inside the repeater itself, right? So then you could do the
yeah,
conversions in
yeah,
there as well.
yeah, exactly. You can do the variable inside the repeater tab. It also supports intruder as well.
Mm.
So you can send this to
Oh wow, okay.
send to intruder, sorry, and then you can have tags in intruder as well. So you can place tags in there and then do an attack. You can also use the payloads. So you can add a payload processor. So invoke Burp extension, and then all the tags are available as a payload processor too.
Could you just quickly talk around for people who are a bit unaware of what a payload processor is, like how that essentially works inside an intruder attack?
Yeah, so when you create an intruder attack, you can decide to call the payload processor to run a conversion. So yeah, you can in the request you can select a sniper attack, and then you can use the payload processor. Uh, yeah, here, I think. Yeah, sorry. You can invoke the extension, and then you can select the type of tag that you want to execute on that payload. So like, for example, MD5 or something. And then every time you run that intruder attack, it will invoke that function, that tag or payload that Virtual is defined on the intruder attack. So it will place it here.
Yep.
So in this instance, it will convert it to an MD5 string.
Got it. So you're saying like if you had a list of values and then you use that like MD5 value, it would just convert everything to MD5 every time it runs the attack with the payload list? Got it.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can also do the same thing here without payload processors. So you could select the text and then
still have the selected value which gets sent in, and then your intercept will work. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, well, you can just do it here. Like here's a SHA-1 hash.
Yeah.
So you can place the tags here, and you can add as many different payload positions as you like, and then combine them in an intruder.
Very powerful. This is basically like if someone was able to leverage this, like when they were doing like particular tests, this would definitely save them a significant amount of time.
Yeah, it's a time saver, definitely. It helps you run functions on pieces of text in a request or in the intruder. So what's really cool as well is you can do all this on anything, but also you can create a custom tag. So Hackvertor has this menu here, and you can create a custom tag. And at the minute, JavaScript isn't supported because Oracle deprecated Nashorn. So in the latest version of JRE that comes with Burp, Nashorn is deprecated, but you can use Python. So my custom tag. So if we create a tag with that's called my custom tag, you can select any arguments that you want. So you can have a string or a number. You can give it like parameters. So all this is doing is assigning output and converting it to uppercase. You can also test the tag in here. So yeah, it's saying that we need to enable codec. Right. So yeah, I need to talk about that. But anyway, we'll create this tag. So I've created this tag, and then in the custom tab, you can see my custom tag is there. And then when we try to run this tag, it will say code execution tags are disabled by default. That was a security decision that I made with the Hackvertor community. What you have to do is you need to allow the code execution tags, because these custom tags are just executing Python, right? So you could compromise your machine. So you can allow the tag here. But what also Hackvertor does is it generates each time the extension runs for the first time, it will generate a unique randomized hash, and then it uses that to decide whether this tag should execute or not.
Okay.
So in this one, we've created this my custom tag. Hackvertor automatically passes this key, this hash, to this tag. So then it allows you to convert it to uppercase. There's a slight delay when Python loads, but yeah, and that's the basic concept. And then what you can do, so you can write a tag in like Java or Python. Well, Java will be supported. I've just not pushed it yet. But you can use various languages to write your own code, and then use these custom tags within Repeater. And then not only that, if you've got this custom tag and it does this operation, it's treated like any other tag in Hackvertor. So like you can run an operation on that output of that tag. So what this does is it calls my custom tag changes it to uppercase, and then base64 encodes it. So you can see how this would be powerful, because if you've got a website that expects a particular format, you could write a custom tag to produce that format, and then you could then encode it multiple times when you send it in the repeater or in intruder. And you can also base64 encode it, and then we can also assign that a variable too. So here we set the variable, and then we can reuse that variable again. So what it's doing is going from the inside, calling the custom tag, base64 encoding it, and then setting a variable, and then you can retrieve the variable. And then if you wanted to, you could then do other operations on that. So on the variable tag itself, we can convert it to hex.
And where have you normally seen people using custom tags? Because would you say like this is where some people start to like use macros less, for example, and then start to use like custom tags with their own like Python perform stuff? Or
Yeah. So stuff like for example, the deserialization thing in the academy, where you had to create a specific format. So at Portswigger, I was testing that lab, and I produced a custom tag to do like the padding and stuff. So I created a tag in JavaScript that added the padding, and then I could just use that in repeater, and then encode it in various ways.
That's nice, because then like you're not having to go and run external tools all the time to kind of generate your payload for you. You can kind of just
exactly.
you can just play around with it inside the repeater itself. And I think like a lot of time is generally lost when like you're not actually like sending requests and testing things and seeing the responses, where you have to like move away from what you're doing and try and like put things in the right format and so on. So I could imagine this being like very very useful for very like more nuanced test cases, but it could still also be used for if you're testing particular formats and you need to get it in let's say like a particular thing. And obviously because it's Python, you can, or at some point JavaScript or Java, it's going to be easily accessible to write that code as well.
Yeah, well, I'm planning to support as many languages as possible, really. So I've already implemented the Java side, but it's not on the Burp store.
I have a very good question, actually. Do you have examples on the GitHub page for this, where you show like examples of variables that might be useful? Or is that something that could be like someone could contribute to, that might be watching this?
I'm not really a pen tester. I'm more of a researcher, but the variables would be definitely be useful in request smuggling, for example. So if you look at James Kettle's research and check out the Portswigger Academy and look at request smuggling, you can immediately see how that could be useful, because you can place parts of the
Yeah.
in other parts of the request, so that can be useful. You could also, like, if it was expecting like an MD hash or something, or a particular format, then you can you can read a value from the body and then add it as a header, for example, like a JWT token or something. You can do all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Would you be open if people were able to submit some example requests to the GitHub page? If that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I haven't really got much time to work on the documentation and the GitHub page, but yeah, if anybody's willing to contribute, then that'd be great. I know Agari does some quite awesome stuff. He does like training on Burp that uses Heckvertor, and he does lots of advanced stuff like that. And Sarush is a big Sarush is a big Hackvertor user, and he does lots of stuff using tags and custom tags in Python and stuff. So yeah, there's quite a few pen testers use Hackvertor, and the custom tags thing was a killer feature, because I hear a lot of people using that quite a lot. I'm not doing pen testing a lot at Portsmouth at the minute, but I'm mainly focusing on research. But yeah, I know a lot of pen testers use custom tags, especially with like custom formats on web applications to help them easily write some Python code or JavaScript code and use it in the repeater without having to write a custom extension.
Got you. Okay, that makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense. Oh,
yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much a lot of the features that Hackvertor has. You can edit your custom tags quite easily just by clicking list custom tags, and then you can just select it and then edit it. You can also share your tags with people. So when you export your tags to the clipboard, it will have some JSON where you can share tags. Obviously, if someone is giving you some custom tags, you need to check that code and make sure it's not going to exploit your machine. But you can export it here and you can load your tags here. So it's useful if you're on a team and you wrote a custom tag. You want to send all the tags that you're working on to your colleague. You can then load all the tags from the clipboard and then reuse all the tags that they've done.
got it. That's actually really smart because, yeah, obviously I can understand now why you had the security conscious decision to disable execution by default.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I could see this being really useful, especially in like, I work in consulting and I work with a bunch of people. And imagine that you're like working on a particular engagement that requires, encryption type thing or requires you to
yeah,
have things in a particular way. You could write some code and obviously either leverage, libraries, etc. You may need to do additional things alongside Hackvector for that, but realistically you could basically like say, hey, run this tag when you're performing testing against this particular API and insert your payload here and you'll be able to actually get expected responses from the server type of thing, which
yeah.
would be super powerful.
Yeah, it's really useful exactly for custom formats and encryption and stuff like that. Yeah, definitely. And if something's not supported, you can add it yourself and share it with your colleagues. Yeah, so yeah, that's cool.
So I've been seeing like the XSS page up there. Is that your intention to show like how you might use Hackvector there or
This one?
no? So like I see like there's an XSS web browser
Oh,
page.
yeah, yeah. Repeater.
Oh,
So this is like an XSS page on Portsmouth Labs. So like I was demonstrating that you can use the base 64 and then you can see the output. So the output is here.
got it.
I was just using some form of reflection just to demonstrate how the tags work.
Got it.
So yeah, Hackvertor will intercept this request, convert it, and the application will just see the base 64 encoded version. And you can edit this and then keep sending the payloads as many times as you want. And if you combine this with multiple tags, if you combine it with variables, if you combine it with custom tags, then you've got a pretty powerful way of editing the request and pretty much you can even read files off the file system. So here, for example,
And that's where I was quite intrigued to see, like, because obviously, you do have access to Python, which means you have access to the default libraries that are exposed in things like Python. So that's, yeah, I would
yeah,
definitely be intrigued to see, because like, that would be good if like a client provided you, or like, you're provided with a list of things, or like arguments and variables that are allowed in the system, for example. I could see this being quite useful to insert and change around and manipulate with inside Hackvector.
yeah. In the with the Python language, yeah, you could read files from the file system. But what you can do if you end the custom tag value here with like a path, so like some path and then slash mycode.js or
Oh, okay.
.py.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of it reading the value in the JSON, it will read off the file system for that particular path to execute the custom tag.
Oh, nice. Okay, so it actually just reads the code directly from your machine rather than
Yeah,
having
exactly.
having to
Yeah,
paste the code in here. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the whole security decision of disabling this by default is because you can read files off the file system. You've got basically remote code execution, um, but it's disabled by default, so you have to enable it each time. It will not remember that setting, so every time you launch Hackvertor, you have to enable it, and you're protected by this key. So it's a random. It's a lot of random data hashed when Hackvertor starts. So an attacker would have to know that key or discover it somehow.
Yeah,
And then if the key is in the repeater, it will not send that key to the web server. Um,
got it.
so
Okay.
there's a few protections that I put in place to make sure that you're not owned using this feature. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, that makes sense.
And if there's any researchers out there who want to break it, then please have a go and see if you can, because that'd be fun.
So I have a few questions, and I also there's some things in the chat as well. Which one is funny, and we should probably, I think you should definitely still show it because even if it's old, it's still good. But the first one was from Parsia, and he mentions he's gonna try and find a thick client to use this for like non-HTTP traffic, to use something like man-in-the-middle relay, which basically allows you to intercept requests, and like for non proxy aware traffic, send it to Burp, and then use Hackvector to manipulate stuff and then send it back to the thick client. So there's definitely a lot of use cases where Hackvector could be really kind of powerful, and I think like in like those scenarios, that kind of is going to be very beneficial to people like utilizing Hackvector.
Cool. Yeah, I love to hear anything like that. So yeah, if people are enjoying using it, or they think that they can suggest something to improve it, then just raise an issue on GitHub and I'll look into it. Obviously, I've got limited time, but yeah, I try and do as many feature requests as I can. So yeah, if I can help the community in any way by improving Hackvertor, then yeah, I'll try my best to do that.
I have a few more things, and then I probably will think we're probably getting close towards the end. But so Parsia corrected me, and it mentions man-in-the-middle relay creates a local web server, puts the payload into a post request, and then puts Burp in the middle, so you can see non-HTTP traffic in Burp and modify it, and then the web server reflects it and back and sends it out. So I have a few questions around Hackvector. So you say you don't have much time. So
Yeah.
are there any kind of feature requests that would be good for someone who is getting new or like is interested in open source development or kind of working on a Burp extension? Do you have any kind of open tickets or like, wish list items that you would love for Hackvector to continue to include? And if so, like how do people get involved with Hackvector?
Yeah, so there's a link. If you click on the Hackvertor menu at the top, report a bug or a feature request here.
Yep.
So if you just click on that, it'll take you to the GitHub page. We've got some open issues at the minute. So yeah, if anybody wants to do a pull request and solve some of those, then that'd be brilliant. That'd be really helpful. But yeah, if you want to just click on the Hackvertor menu, click on here, and then file in a bug report or a feature request, and I'll look into it.
Sounds good. And so not insert script, I wonder who that could be, has a request saying, did he miss the part about Shazza? So I think we should probably just show what Shazza was, because it's very simple, not similar, but it has, the same kind of properties that you would expect for this type of stuff in Shazza. So if you could just show Shazza and like what that is, that would be, pretty fun. Let me just.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
Shazza. Sorry.
No, you're good. It's my machine. To turn this up because I made it smaller so people could see. All right. Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah, so I wrote Shazza many years ago, and it was basically to do what I showed you in the Hackvertor console. But browsers at the time when I wrote this weren't as powerful as Chrome is now. It wasn't as fast. So I wrote Shazza to basically use your create a test case and then use other browsers to do the fuzz test case. So like here, for example, if we look at Chrome, Yeah, it's quite slow as well, and this isn't fixed. but if we look at Chrome 47, yeah, you can see this particular test case by who's it by? Tifkin. So characters that eat regex escapes, for example. So he would create a test case. I think we can. No. Oh, we can't see the test case. Oh, here. You can see it here. So this particular one, so somebody would create some JavaScript that logs the characters, similar to how I was showing you with Hackvertor, and then this would show you each character. It gives you the name. It gives you. You can view the individual test case. You can view the character code, the hex, and this basically just tells you which characters eat regex escapes in this particular test.
Could you just zoom into the test case? So like just
Yeah, sure.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not going to view the test case because,
right.
it's like I didn't write this, but maybe I'll find one that I wrote. Maybe that's better. Yeah, so this one is like single characters that break attribute names. So, yeah, so the test case is basically a div element, and then we've got an invalid attribute, and then we log when that executes. So if this image executes, it will log that character and record it. So it's telling you that this is a line feed, and that's been injected in this test case, and it resulted in that function being called, so it being logged. Yeah, so insert script, or Alex, is uses Shazza quite a lot, but it is pretty old. I haven't updated the code, and there's like 3 million fuzz cases on there, and my database server isn't the fastest, but it works. It's not too bad. But yeah, that's basically what Shazza is. So you basically create. Oh, I need to log in. But anyway, you create a test case like this one. So you give it like a placeholder, character placeholder. That'll be replaced, and that will log the character number. That log function records the result. Yeah. So like this one, for instance, is fuzzing whether a character is inserted in a closing script. Will that still result in execution of this function? And if it is, then it will record it as a successful test case. And then.
And do you need to define the characters in this in this scenario, or is it just like Shazza is already aware of like what characters to try and include?
It tries to do 100,000 characters. So it will carry on as well if you wanted to, but it's a bit pointless because the way that I'm generating the characters, it doesn't support like higher Unicode characters, because I wrote the code a while ago. But the idea is you place the star char placeholder, and it will replace the character with that, and then the num placeholder will replace the number.
Got it. Yeah, this is. I could imagine seeing this be very useful, especially like in the olden times when browsers were.
Yeah, this was when I used the big thing.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty old, so I remember all those days when I used to be a right mess, and it was fun to fuzz.
I wouldn't say that. Nice. So we have a question in the chat, and I think we're getting close towards the end. So they asked, how do you get started with it? So like Hackvertor. Sorry, I keep saying vector Hackvertor. So I keep saying Hackvertor. I renamed the stream and everything. My bad. There's the /tutorials, and the Git README has a few sentences. Is there, maybe that's like probably someone needs to put in some effort from the community to kind of include, or if someone could probably do that.
I must admit, documentation isn't. I don't really have a lot of time for that. But there is, if you look on the Portswigger blog, there is a post about Hackvertor where I decode a T-shirt automatically, which is quite fun. Yeah. So if you go to portswigger/research and look for Hackvertor on there, yeah, that I
That's it.
automatically decode a B-sides T-shirt that's got like multiple layers of encoding, and what Hackvertor does is automatically discovers it. So that's a good place to start to see if you know how to use it. Yeah, but yeah, I'll try to put some examples on GitHub if I have time. But at the minute, my work time is spent doing research and stuff, whereas my spare time is spent developing Hackvertor. So I don't have a lot of time to improve it, but I'll try my best to consider every feature request and fix bugs as soon as I can.
Got it. So I think the main summary is if you're interested in learning Hackvertor and want to contribute, probably the best thing to start with is probably the documentation. But Gareth, this has been, it's actually like opened my eyes up to a lot of things, to be honest, with Hackvertor, and I'm actually going to probably leverage it in my next assessment. So I do appreciate, no, you're good. So I do appreciate all of your time today. I think it's probably a good place to stop. So if you want to check out Gareth, make sure you check out his Twitter at twitter.com/Gareth Hayes. Do you have anything else you want to plug while we have you here, Gareth?
No, not really. Just want to say thanks for having me on. It's been great working with you in the past, and look forward to working with you again, doing stuff. And yeah, just everybody who uses Hackvertor, I really appreciate it. I hope I make everybody's life easier, hopefully. Yeah, and that's it, basically.
All right, well, this was episode 6 of SecuriTEA and Crumpets. Make sure you check us out on Friday with Dr. Mario Hedrich to talk about things around cross-site scripting.
Yeah, you should really check that out.
You should definitely check it out because Gareth says Mario's awesome.